Hello and welcome back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour. Tonight we're recapping the improbable victory over the Bills on Sunday with none other than Ben Goessling of the Star Tribune. We'll also look forward to the Cowboys-Vikings matchup on Sunday and check in on some other topics as well. So grab your Lake Monster beer and enjoy the show.
Welcome to Vikings Happy Hour, where we mix our favorite beverage and talk of your Minnesota Vikings. Skol!
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour. Like I touched on in the intro there, Ben Goessling will be joining us at around 8:15 to talk Minnesota Vikings. But before we get there, it's the normal crew. It's myself, Ryan, Miles, and this show and all of our other shows are brought to you by That's Badass Wood Art. You can head over to that'sbadasswoodart.com, get 20% off any one item using promo code CTPocket, as well as Lake Monster Brewing in St. Paul, Minnesota. They have a great collection of craft beers. Head on over there and pick yourself up some growlers, or crowlers, I guess, for the winter months. Guys.
And it looks like That's Badass Wood Art's already making a Justin Jefferson catch.
As he should, man.
I'm gonna have to cop one of those for sure. Like, yeah, I'm about to snag one of those for sure.
Yeah, we're gonna spend stupid money on that for sure. I don't care what it costs.
Christmas is coming up. Yeah, Christmas is coming up.
What a game!
Hey, you were there, so hey Matt, so you were there. Can you tell us about the atmosphere? I'm gonna be honest. I've never been to US Bank Stadium. Just gonna go on Christmas Eve this year. I know. Relax. So I'm gonna go on Christmas Eve. Thanks to Ryan hooking that up. But what was the atmosphere like? And can you compare it to like US Bank Stadium and kind of just and you were at the Minneapolis Miracle too. So like, can you compare like everything and like how all that shit, the crazy shit was?
Dude,
especially as a visitor too.
Yeah. So I've been trying to go to away games each year if I can. We went to the Charger game last year. That one was super fun. But man, this one, it was so. First off, it was cold. It was like super cold. Winter had just hit, I feel like, when we got there. I didn't bring a coat, so tailgating was a little chilly. But the Bills fans in the tailgate parties that you hear about, exactly as advertised. People throwing footballs, playing little games, jumping through tables. It's exactly what you'd think. But then the vibe in the stadium was just electric. And I think it changed overnight, right? Because there was a lot of skepticism coming into the game about whether or not Josh Allen would even play. And then it kind of broke late Saturday night-ish that he was going to probably, at least that they didn't activate another quarterback from the practice squad. So then the excitement really started to build. Like, we're going to get a game. The Vikings go down and score. The Bills go down and score. And it just it was just so electric. But it really was that fourth quarter, man. Every single play that happened, it was just like you could look in the crowd and there was a section of Bills fans that would just jump and scream and holler. And then the next play, it was Viking fans doing the same thing. And it was that way it felt like an eternity. And it was such a roller coaster of emotion, and all of the action towards the end of the game kind of happened down on our end. So like the goal line with Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson's catch was kind of on our side of the field. It was it's not obviously it can't supplant the Minneapolis Miracle for me, but my gosh, for being an away fan, it sure felt pretty close to that kind of environment. It was indescribable. And then you throw in the fact that I was probably 10 beers deep, if not more. And I'm doing the post game show with Dave and Jason and trying to show what was going on. And
They had
yeah,
Lake
it
Monster
was.
out in Buffalo too. Nice. I didn't know they had that kind of reach.
Oh, no, I should have brought some though. I should have brought some. But what was it like for you guys? Because here's the one thing about being at the stadium, right? You can't quite see the level of detail that you guys get to see on the screen. So like obviously I know that Justin Jefferson caught it, but we had to kind of wait for like player reaction to really get that like and know for sure. And then when we saw it on the screen, then you really realized how awesome that catch was. But for you guys, what was it like just watching from home?
Miles, you can go first.
Yeah, I was so my kids were running around. We were kind of like going crazy. And with that throw, the Justin Jefferson catch, I don't think anybody knew in my house like if he caught it. Just the way it looked, it was like the ball went up. I thought, oh, maybe it got picked, just because the way it looked. The DB went up for the ball like he was gonna pick it, and so I was like, oh, and he had really good positioning, and so I was like, oh yeah, I think it's gonna be an interception, game over, that type of thing. And then like the way they rolled, and then like stood up, and then I hear the announcers like yell like he caught it, and then you see the players in the field like run to the
Nice.
line, and so that kind of like cued me. I was like, well, did he actually catch that shit? Like, I just like
Yeah.
couldn't believe it. And then obviously the replay came through, and you just saw how insane, how close the ball
Yeah.
came to like hitting the ground. How somehow the guy had two hands on the ball, JJ only had one, but JJ's like momentum was stronger because that you'd have thought the guy's ability to yank the ball out would have happened, but it didn't. And then my first thought, I told my wife, the first thing I said when even before I knew JJ caught it, the way the guy went up to catch it to intercept it, I was like, oh, he should have just swatted that shit down. It's fourth down.
Mhm.
Why would you even try to go for an interception playing hero ball? Like you end the game, and the field positioning is better if JJ if nobody catches the ball. And so
Yeah.
I was that was all like running through my head. And then we find out he caught it, and I was like, that dude just fucked his whole game up because
Yeah.
obviously I didn't know how anything was going to end after that, but it was just so insane how I was like, okay, the Vikings really have a horseshoe because like I thought after the Von Miller sack on third down, I'm like, oh shit, like here it comes,
It's done.
you
Yeah.
know, this is like the first time I was like, I think this might be the one where we don't really like make that noise that that we made earlier in the seasons, all the one score games coming from behind, all that stuff. I was like, I think we're gonna fall short this time, and
Which
it
would have
just
been
went
okay.
crazy. It would have been,
Like
yeah,
it
no, exactly.
would.
Like I think we all would have been like not like happy, but we would have been good with an outcome of like almost beating the Bills just because of the way that they played, and we didn't expect them to going in to beat them anyway. So I feel like we
Mhm.
definitely that's a really good point, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, like 27-23 comeback, mounted a comeback, fell short. I would have been okay with that. We competed with, what arguably one of the Super Bowl favorites, at least at that time. Yeah, for me, it
No,
was it was an interesting game because I've been really working hard this year, trying to maintain a positive attitude throughout the game. And as we're down 17 points, as you can imagine, it's probably pretty difficult. But again, I'm sitting on the ground watching the game and I'm like, hey, we can still do this. We can still do this. Just chip away, just chip away. And then, you have your Dalvin touchdown. I'm freaking out. And then you have the interception. Of course, me getting a little upset throughout that drive of them going down the field, but and then
Yeah.
ending it with the interception there. And then again, going down the field, making that incredible catch. Again, couldn't believe it. Your emotions are just going. I mean, it was a truly emotional roller coaster. Both my wife and I were both just like, I'm tired. Well, just from watching the game, like I'm emotionally exhausted. And
It was
because you
nuts.
had every emotion, you went from just extreme excitement to he didn't get the touchdown, so just incredibly angry, right, that he couldn't get in, to oh my gosh, we just scored a touchdown, to what that, like, refs, what are you doing? You have to review that catch. There's no way that was a catch. To them kicking a field goal. I mean, I think I smacked my hand into the ground a few times. My arm was a little sore the next day. And then, going down, scoring. It was just, again, a huge range of emotions. Super angry as they're driving down. When we pick that ball up at the end, I go pick my wife up. I'm just elated. My kids are all just screaming. I'm screaming. It was a great family moment, actually.
Yeah, I'm going to address a comment here with Dustin. He asked if I got harassed at all by Bills fans. Most of them were actually okay during the game. I'd say a lot of people were just like, they were just frustrated after the game, and rightfully so. I mean, when it's a back and forth like classic like that, someone's got to lose. Um, someone's got to lose, and the Bills fans, when we'd walk out on the concourse and high five, other Viking fans, they'd give
They
us
could have
dirty
tied.
looks and
They could have tied.
yeah, and tell us to f off, but it was okay. The fun thing I will say, and this is separate from the Vikings here, but it was it was really good to see Stephon Diggs on the field again. Like getting to watch him for a full game. Um, are you leaving, Miles? You don't
No,
want to
I
hear
was just
that?
looking at the Timberwolves game. I was just checking the
Oh,
Timberwolves game real quick.
um, and honestly, this it doesn't hurt me to say it because I have no affiliation to either of these men, but I think going into this game, I still was pretty sure that Diggs was the better receiver. In one game, probably shouldn't sway that for you, but I don't know. It just felt like this handing off of a baton from Diggs to Jefferson in that game, um, and
And they
if
both
it's
had unreal games. They both played really
yeah,
well, and they both had insane catches. Obviously, JJ's was like the bigger impact at the end of the game, but Diggs's was huge in the fact that it was like 3rd and 15. The Bills needed to like keep the drive going. So,
Diggs
yeah, we got
snatched
to see
that
two.
thing.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, he did. We got to see two superstars. Like JJ's not even in his prime. Diggs is obviously in his prime, but we got to watch two superstars like battle, and that was fun. Just like two guys that we both like. Obviously, Matt, you and I both, obviously huge fans of. Ryan, who knows? Like you're kind of weird about
Oh, I, I,
who you
I
like.
absolutely love both. Yeah, I mean, neither one of them went to Oklahoma, but I do love both of them a ton. Um, and I do always think back to this because this is, I think, when we made that trade, it was like right as Thielen was on the downturn, right? Could we have traded Thielen instead of Diggs in that situation? Obviously, Diggs wanted out, right? But just like hypotheticals, right? Imagine having these two guys on the same team. Now that would be insane.
Yeah, that
I, I
that doesn't
needed it.
happen very much in the NFL, but it was very enjoyable to watch Diggs, kind of see him pregame out there on the field, yucking it up with his former teammates, including Kirk Cousins, which last week he was on record saying it was not the QB. I don't know if you guys read the article with the Athletic, but there was a good breakdown of kind of how that trade transpired with Rick Diggs's agent, Diggs himself. Um, so I want to talk about the defense quick before Ben hops on and get your guys' takes on that because they started out the season pretty, iffy, right? And they're learning a new scheme. Some of them, it's a whole new defense, for the whole team. And I think there were a lot of questions about the defense, but these last few weeks, they've turned in some pretty good performances against some good teams and have been opportunistic when it comes to the turnover and making clutch plays. Ryan, what are your overall thoughts on this defense, and is it sustainable as we kind of get down to the final run here of trying to get to the playoffs?
Yeah, I wouldn't describe the defense as good. I don't think they've played well,
No,
honestly. I think they've played clutch. They've made the plays they've needed to make in the key moments in games throughout the last few weeks. So letting up 30 points is never that's not a sign of a good defense. Even though it is the Bills, but you don't want to be letting up 30 points against any team. But again, they won the game for us, right? They got the game, or they got the go ahead touchdown, they got the game sealing interception, right? So they're the ones that are making the key plays at the key moments to help us win these games, whether it's an interception to give us the ball back to take the go-ahead score, whether it's winning the game or giving us a chance to really win the game with that defensive touchdown. So is that sustainable? Now that's the key question, right? So can they just play good defense where they're locking teams down, right? Where they're not needing to rely on an interception at the end of the game to give us a chance, but instead our offense operating efficiently, so we have the lead, and then them maintaining that ability for us to keep the lead by shutting teams down. Now, that's what I want to see by playoff time. There's a lot of opportunity for them to continue to grow. To your point, they were Swiss cheese at the beginning of the year, and they have grown immensely, I think, through this process as they all start to learn the system better. I mean, you've literally seen that from Hunter playing much better, Zadarius Smith maintaining a high level of competence at that position. Eric Kendricks looks more comfortable, and Patrick Peterson and Harrison Smith are making their way now too, right? So, like all the key guys that you need to play well are starting to, I think, feel more comfortable in the system, and you're seeing that on the field. Now let's get everyone else on par here. One of the key things that I noticed during this game on defense. One player on each side of the ball, really, who were like two of the unsung heroes from this game in terms of just playing big in key moments here. Duke Shelley with the biggest pass breakup of the game. And I would say 95% of Vikings fans have no idea who Duke Shelley is. He came in for Andrew Booth. I was listening to Doogie this morning, he was on a pod last night. He said Booth wasn't hurt. So I don't know if Booth got pulled because of poor play or if he was tired, whatever it was. But Duke Shelley came and knocked that ball out of Dawson Knox's hands without getting a PI call. And then Blake Brandel on the other side, having to step in for our all-pro left tackle, Darisaw. And again, he let up a sack, but he played really, really well for the most part. It's all about the team dynamic. And I think as a team, they're all growing really well together, especially on that defense.
Miles, when I brought up this topic of defense, I saw you just kind of shaking your head back there. Are you kind of in the same boat as Ryan here on this defense?
Well, I think this defense has gotten to a point where they're like definitely a bend don't break type defense. Of course, like the Bills for 3.5 quarters were going up and down the field. Like obviously the turnovers created the big difference, right? Which is that happens. Like if the Vikings can create turnovers to like sway games, like and be the difference in games, that like keep doing it, please. But at the end of the day, that it's hard to sustain that. And so like the margins for error in those situations make it more tough. Like if Josh Allen doesn't go galaxy brain for like 2 plays, and this is all hypothetical, right? Like he did do these things. So like I'm going to give the Vikings defense credit for creating those turnovers. Like they did a great job creating. Like Patrick Peterson essentially baited Josh Allen into that game-winning interception. That was great. Like that's a veteran savvy move that like earlier in the season I was a little bit, and I still like have some worries about Patrick Peterson's like man skills, like in man coverage. But overall, like when he gets to play his face to the quarterback and gets to play zone defense and can bail and read the quarterback, I think you're not going to find a better cornerback in the league that can do that right now than how smart Patrick Peterson is. And so he's playing like it too, and you can see the confidence it's raising week in and week out. And a guy like him, even for his a little bit older in age and a future Hall of Famer type player, if his confidence is up, like he might as well be an All-Pro player right now, because that's the type of player he is when his confidence there. So to watch him do that on Sunday against Josh Allen was a lot of fun. And I think I'm just excited to see how he continues to play. Hopefully we need him to stay healthy, because obviously Cam Dancer got hurt, Caleb Evans got hurt, Andrew Booth obviously so green, like that dude's was getting worked by Diggs a little bit, which shouldn't be surprising. Like it's the Stephon Diggs, they put him out, in front of him for a reason. And
Well,
then obviously
and
you mentioned Duke
Diggs
Shelley
worked
too.
Patrick Peterson too. I mean,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
turned
right.
Patrick Peterson on a turnstile too. I mean, when you're going against the best route runner in the league and you're a rookie,
Yeah,
yeah, all he's doing is making sure he's not getting beat deep. He's letting him have
right,
those underneath routes and trying to make the tackle, which he didn't do. And luckily, he had
right.
teammates helping. But
Yep. But last part here is like, so if the most important players you have Daniil Hunter and Zadarius Smith, I could probably throw Harrison Phillips into that. Harrison Phillips or Dalvin Tomlinson. I think one of those two guys. Like you need to have at least one of those two guys running the D line. The two edge rushers I just mentioned, Eric Kendricks, Harrison Smith, and then you got Patrick Peterson. Those are by far the like I know that's like majority of the defense, but like if those guys are healthy, you have a chance every week because those guys are the most important players on your defense and they're the best players on your defense. So, and then obviously you have guys like Jordan Hicks playing pretty well, Cam Bynum, and some of those guys. So,
Yeah.
excited just to see how the defense continue to progress. But yeah, I would say that they did a really good job overall, even though the Bills kind of worked him up and down the field the first half of the game for sure.
Perfect. Well, we are now joined by Ben Goessling of the Star Tribune. You can catch him over there or on his podcast, Access Vikings, with Andrew Kramer. Ben, what a fun season. Did we just lose him? I think we might have just lost him here for a second. So we'll give him a hot second to come back here. But yes, Ben Goessling, Star Tribune. If you don't follow him already, at Ben Goessling on Twitter. He is the Star Tribune's Vikings beat reporter. You can find him on KFan as well. And he does do a podcast with Andrew Kramer called Access Vikings through the Star Tribune. So that is a fun one to be on. There we go. We got him back.
There you go. That's better.
Ben, how are you? How has this season been? Covering the 8-1 Vikings, which is a weird thing to say.
I mean, it's been a lot different. It's everything about it has been different in just about any way you could imagine. I mean, on the field, off the field, how they do things, pick an area. It's different. Everything about it has been a lot different than last year, and certainly the results have been different too. So, you've heard a lot of players kind of talk about it being refreshing and just kind of nice to have a change. I think that's been part of it. But so far, what they're doing is working, which obviously makes everybody even more excited about this change of pace and how it's going.
You've been on a lot of podcasts today. I saw you this morning on Up and Adams with Kay Adams, and how was that show? How was it? I saw you guys talking about just sort of the culture of the Minnesota Vikings, and so wondering if you have anything else to add on kind of what you talked about on that show this morning.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can get into it. It's, I did that one, and then we did our Access Vikings podcast this afternoon. So you guys are the encore act for the day, the after party, whatever you want to call it. Well, what do you want to know? I mean, culture-wise,
you've been through Leslie Frazier, Mike Zimmer, and now Kevin O'Connell. I guess we'll start with the major differences between Zimmer and O'Connell. Obviously, we know that Zimmer's a little bit more old school. Connell is more, embracing, maybe open-minded would be a good term to describe him. But what have you noticed, in the locker room with this team, with Kevin O'Connell at the helm?
Well, I think, one of the things that sticks out early with him is he talks a lot about player empowerment, and I think that's certainly part of it. There is less of a thing where if guys make a mistake, they're not as worried about going back to the sideline and am I going to get barked at? Am I going to get pulled from the game? I mean, we would joke about it in the press box about the Zimmer hook with guys, they make a mistake. George Iloka, Andrew Kramer and I still talk about this. He made a mistake in a game and he basically was never seen again. So I mean,
And he
they
was
had
Zim's
the
guy.
where a guy would mess up in coverage and they'd get benched, and it could be for a game, it could be they lose their spot. You haven't seen those things with O'Connell to the same degree. Now, could you go too far that way? Sure. I mean, I think that the one everybody's probably wondering about at the moment is the kicker. At what point is the leash going to run out for him? But I think there is more of a feeling of, hey, we've got your back. There's less probably of a reactionary thing. I mean, even today, O'Connell said, we're not going to practice because we've got 2 games in the next 8 days. And I want you guys to be fresh. I want you to kind of be back to kind of whatever work you still need to do to come down from the emotional roller coaster of Sunday. Let's do that. Zimmer, I think it would have been, we are going to get back to normal by working. And that's not, that worked certainly at times. I mean, they had a lot of success under him. And I think, he probably just ran out of steam towards the end. But you've seen differences, I think, in that approach. There's much more of a focus on let's emphasize having players fresh on Sundays. Let's do more work, whether it's in walkthroughs, jog-throughs, in meetings, and less of it probably on the practice field. I think that's different. I think the relationship with Kirk Cousins is a lot different between this head coach and the previous head coach. You kind of go down the list. I mean, the stuff on the planes you would not have seen in the past. Even things like recognizing guys for winning NFC Defensive Player of the Week or NFC Offensive Player of the Week, like Justin Jefferson did, or statistical achievements. I think you see more recognition of individual things that are important to players that you probably didn't see as much under Mike Zimmer. So that you really can kind of pick an area, and it's quite a bit different. I mean, really all of it, you're in the building every day, and there's just it's just a very different feeling.
Refreshing.
Definitely. Ben, can you expand a little bit more on the Cousins O'Connell relationship? I know it's been talked about ad nauseum over the last 9, 10, 12 months, but my question for you is more around, so there's times Kirk Cousins right now is throwing more, I guess you could say, interception worthy throws than what we've seen in the past 5 years, as a Minnesota Viking. There is times where Mike Zimmer would say, hey, Kirk, loosen the reins a little bit more, open it up a little bit more, take more chances. But we know how Mike Zimmer is in that, if he had done it too much, it definitely would have become too much for Zimmer. But O'Connell seems okay with the, a little bit more of that mix and match, take the chances when you need to. Can you expand a little bit more on, maybe how we're seeing, because at times with under Zimmer, Kirk wouldn't take those chances at all. And under O'Connell, he definitely seems way more comfortable, and it's not so much self-defeating when he does throw some of those, crazy interceptions like what we saw on Sunday against Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is probably how he's being coached in the system. I mean, they've talked more about kind of wanting him to read things high to low, probably a little bit more than what we would have seen in the previous system. I think you would have probably seen a little more left to right type of reading on pass patterns in the past. That's some of it. I generally think, I mean, Cousins is somebody, and I've said this, that is not ever going to be, he's not going to take the Aaron Rodgers approach to the position. What I mean by that is he's never going to say, I don't care, or I'm at least not going to play the position exactly the way you, head coach, want it done because I'm Aaron Rodgers. I know better. I'm going to put my own spin on the offense. I'm going to kind of change things how I see it done. Cousins cares a lot about the way the coach wants the position played, and he wants to spend the time to play the position the way he is coached to do it. So whoever's coaching him in the moment, I think, has a fairly large influence on how he's going to go about it. So if he's got Kevin O'Connell saying, hey, and Kevin O'Connell said this, I'm proud of you for throwing that ball that he threw at the end of the first half in Washington, even though it got intercepted. He said, that's okay, because this is the matchup we were looking for. We wanted to get Justin Jefferson a one-on-one. We're going to take our chances that most of the time Jefferson's going to come down with that ball. In fact, he had one earlier in the half against Benny St. Juste that was a touchdown, kind of on a similar setup. So I think for the most part, there's a little more willingness to say, hey, we're going to take our chances here. On balance, we like you doing that more often than not because, I mean, heck, you saw it Sunday. I mean, Justin Jefferson, according to Next Gen Stats, 9 of his 10 catches were below 50%
Unreal.
probability, which was the most they've ever charted. And, you know, is there a line to that? I asked O'Connell that after the game. He said, yeah, there's a line. But on balance, I think they feel like when you've got a guy that Chip Scoggins and I were rewatching in the media room today, and towards they had the end of the game back on NFL Network. We were watching it back, and it's just like it was as if Jefferson said, "We're not losing this game. I'm not going to let us lose the game. I'm going to come down with everything that comes anywhere near me if it's the last thing I do." I mean, you know, you had obviously the 4th and 18, but the catch he makes later on that drive where he gets, you know, kind of grabbed as he comes through the route and gets hit in the middle of the air, kind of comes down sideways and lands awkwardly, put him on the 3-yard line. There was just a lot of moments in that game where it felt like this is my ball and I'm not letting you have it. So I think they feel like if your offense is based on giving that guy a chance, it's a better way to live than to try to, you know, kind of freeze him out or at least be overly cautious in a way that does freeze him out. We've seen that. We saw that in December. We've seen that at times this year. I think they have kind of tried to say, we need to get this guy the ball and we'll figure the rest of it out.
Real quick, Ryan, before you jump in, I just wanted to one more question about like Kirk Cousins and the offense. Obviously, statistically, his numbers aren't the same as what they've been. Like his numbers, like he was a top 5, top 10 PFF graded quarterback, you know, last 4 years. Curious to like, obviously the Vikings are 8-1, so like I couldn't care less about Kirk's overall like PFF numbers right now. They're 8-1, they're playing well enough, but like that's always been a big talking point around Kirk Cousins is like, oh well, the numbers are there, the team's not winning, but the numbers are there. The numbers aren't quite there this year, obviously they're 8-1. Can you expand a little bit more? And like, in my opinion, I don't feel like this offense is the best fit for Kirk Cousins. I think the Gary Kubiak style was like the best fit for Kirk Cousins, but I was curious, like your thoughts on like him under O'Connell and him within this offense and how he expands to like, obviously they're still successful because they're winning and obviously Justin Jefferson helps erase everything else. Just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think there were certainly a lot of things in the Kubiak system, certainly the play action stuff and the bootleg stuff. We don't see as much of that in this scheme. They are asking him probably to make more throws that, you know, you talked about it, could be turnover-worthy plays. And we've seen the interceptions up a little bit. Now, a couple of those were just bad interceptions in Philadelphia. The one last week was not very good. I mean, I haven't asked him about that play. I'd love to know, like, did you see color flash out of the corner of your eye and you think it was your receiver? Because that's almost how it looked. Like he thought, okay, I've got a guy over here and I'm going to throw it. I mean, statistically, it's not been as good. But you also, I think, you would not have won that game last week if he didn't make some of those throws where it's like, hey, we got to have it. I got to take a chance right here. I mean, I think the one – I'm trying to remember where it was in the game, but he's on the right hash, and he basically throws it blind. The protection's breaking down. He throws it blind to the opposite side of the field. Jefferson catches it. It's like that's a big boy throw. I mean,
that was overtime. I think that was early overtime.
It was.
That was over. Yeah. So many things happen in the game. It's hard to keep track.
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Like 5 games in one.
Dan chimes in. This is actually a good point. The garbage time stuff to pad stats has not been there. There has been a lot of times in the past, especially last year, where they're playing from behind, playing soft defenses. Right. That's probably true. That's a really good point. I hadn't stopped to think about that. But yeah, I mean, I think when you watch the way he's playing the position, and I'd be curious to kind of hear what scouts think of this, because there's so much of a narrative around him that, I mean, he made some throws on Sunday, whether it's that one or the one that really caught my eye. It was like 3 minutes left in regulation. He's got 2 defenders coming at him. He basically evades 2 guys, resets. It was like a 6-yard pass to KJ Osborne. Not a huge deal, but he put that ball in a pretty tight window after evading 2 guys, resetting, and throwing a dart. I mean, that sort of stuff is not something we've seen him do in the past. And those types of plays in close games make a difference, I think. So
Yeah.
He feels more comfortable in the pocket. At least he seems that way.
yeah.
Well,
I asked
and
him today. I'm writing about it for a little bit later this week. But yeah, he had quite a few thoughts on that, both in the press conference, and I caught up with him a little bit afterwards too. So there'll be more on that coming later this week.
Sweet.
And to your point earlier, Ben, I'm going to bring up two comments that you had kind of made earlier, if I can remember them. But the first one is around Kirk Cousins and that interception he threw in Washington, right? So that's a mistake. Obviously, it's kind of a fluky mistake, right? You have a one-on-one matchup with your best receiver. It goes off his chest, bounces into the defend, not even the guy defending him, but a different defender's arm who came in on the play. Super fluky. Yeah. I'm excited at the fact that he didn't remember that and say, I'm done making those one-on-one throws, right? Yeah. Like the very next game, he goes and throws the exact same play to Justin Jefferson for a touchdown in the first drive this last week. And it's just very exciting to kind of see that, right? So going off topic here, we had a comment that came in from Dustin, and it was going to be the comment that I was going to, or a question I was going to ask you as well, actually, is just around some of the injuries, right? So we've had a lot of good injury luck so far this year in terms of not losing key contributors on this team. Dancer was the first domino to fall there. Well, I guess Dalvin Tomlinson probably was. Yeah. And then so I was hoping to see if you had any injury updates on Tomlinson. Obviously, we lost Darrisaw last week, Caleb Evans last week, and then it is and then Zadarius Smith, and now of course Justin Jefferson pops up with a toe. So, is there any information you have around any sort of those guys? Can we be optimistic that they might play this week? What are your thoughts on all of that?
I don't think you need to be terribly worried about Zadarius Smith or Justin Jefferson. Jefferson popped up today, and they didn't practice in full today, so we'll see what that looks like. But my hunch would be that he's okay. I mean, given the fact that they even had him limited and not completely out on a Wednesday, he still did get some work in today. So, and Zadarius Smith, they're gonna have to manage that all year. I mean, that's still kind of the nagging. It was that knee contusion stuff that he had early in the year. Bothered him in London. That was kind of a concern going into the London game. So they're going to have that. I mean, they're going to have to kind of figure out how to manage that through the week. So you're going to see probably practices where he sits out or does limited work. I mean, that stuff's going to be there. I don't expect they will be without him on Sunday, at least as it stands at this point. I would think that we probably are looking at the same thing for Jefferson. I don't think they're at risk of missing him. I do not expect they're going to push Dalvin Tomlinson terribly hard to come back before he's fully ready, because they are kind of taking the long view. And even that is a little bit different. I mean, you can think of so many times with the previous regime where it was, okay, Dalvin Cook, I remember 2018, every week it was, well, we got a limited pitch count for him, hamstring kind of thing. And it was so much the same thing every week, where he went to Adam Thielen the next year and said, you got a hamstring, shut it down. Don't try to come back too early. Just let the thing heal up. There is more, I think, of a long view on some of these things where it's, and you can do that, I suppose, too, when you're 8-1 and you're saying, we're going to be playing in January. It's not, we have to play with our hair on fire just to try to keep our season alive, and then we worry about the rest of it later. I don't think you're going to see Tomlinson this week for that reason. I think they are getting there with him, but I don't think they want to rush him back. Evans and Darrisaw, I mean, it's concussion stuff. We'll have to see how it goes. O'Connell has been fairly transparent with injury stuff for the most part, but with the concussions, he doesn't want to kind of project and put, I think, because he's aware that if he says it as a coach that I expect this guy's going to play, it puts a little bit of pressure on that player and then the training staff to have that player ready. So I think he, especially with concussions, has tried to sit out of those things, and he's talked a little bit about some of his own experiences in that regard as a player, and having, I can't remember how many he had as a player, but he's certainly been around it enough to see, like, hey, this is not something to screw around with. So,
well, and what the league is at with concussions too right now, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the Tua Tagovailoa protocol certainly changes some of those things, and obviously the Vikings were probably directly benefited from that in the sense that that came right before they played them, and the Dolphins kind of, I think, knew that the league was watching them fairly closely. I mean, even the way they handled things with Teddy Bridgewater that week, they were awfully cautious. So yeah, it is
Yeah.
certainly it's a front burner issue, and I don't think they're going to be overly pushy to get those guys back. I mean, we'll see how it goes throughout the week, but that's my hunch on that. I mean, Darisaw, you'd certainly like to have him with that
Yeah.
pass rush and the number of guys they throw at it. But Blake Brandel did fine on Sunday, but Darisaw right now is playing as well as any left tackle in the league, so you'd certainly like to have him before that game on Sunday.
And one other quick follow up to that, Ben, is at the end of the game this last week. Obviously, Evans went out with a concussion, and Andrew Booth came in, and then the last two plays of the game, we saw Duke Shelley. So some people were speculative of, is Andrew Booth hurt? He didn't look hurt after the game. He looked like he was having a good time celebrating after that. So did you at all get any insight as to why Duke Shelley was in the game over Booth? Is it poor play? Is it he needed a breather? Is it an injury? Anything that came from that?
I don't know. I haven't asked that question and haven't really had a chance to get to the bottom of it. I mean, it was kind of one of those things where, as I wrote something in the paper the other day about towards the end of those games, sometimes when I'm scrambling to get my story done, my view of all the little details at the end of a game is probably not. My view of it is probably not as good as people that are watching on TV because I'm trying to do like three things at once. So, my head kind of popped up and like Duke Shelley's in there and he just saved the game. So, kind of where the heck did he come from? But yeah, I'd have to go back and look and see if it was a package thing or if they weren't happy with the way Andrew Booth was playing. I don't believe he got hurt. He didn't show up on the injury report today. So if there was something going on, in addition to some of the things he said earlier this year, I think we would have seen that today. They would have had to list something if there was any type of injury that would cause him to miss any practice. That's going to be interesting to watch because
it was a weird deal. I mean, I was rewatching the game today, probably similar to you, right? And I was rewatching that like literally that final sequence, and I even like backed up and was like, okay, why is Shelley in the game? So I like went through the last few plays. I'm like, okay, Booth's in here. He did, he lost a rep to Diggs. Booth's in here. They didn't throw his way. Like, what happened there? So I was like, maybe he's just tired, or maybe because of that. Because I mean, he got worked by Diggs quite a few times, and so maybe they're just like, all right, let's try this other guy. And he came in and made one of the biggest plays of the game, honestly, breaking up that touchdown pass to Knox.
Yeah, I mean, that ball when Allen threw it, and that was coming right towards us where we sit in the stadium, and that end zone was the press box at Highmark Stadium is kind of in the end zone, just off in the corner. So that was coming right at us when that happened, and when he threw it, I thought that's got a chance to be a touchdown. So yeah, Shelley made a heck of a play to break that up. Then obviously they live to fight on, and Patrick Peterson picks it off and ends the game. So. Yeah, that's certainly worth watching because their cornerback depth right now is it's being tested. I mean, everybody goes through that at some point during the year. I think everybody ends up getting their cornerback depth tested to some degree. But it's an issue right now, and certainly this is a team that's going to stress you in the secondary with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and some of the other guys they have.
Before we let you go, I have a quick question. And then just hoping to snag your prediction for Sunday's game. I feel like O'Connell has sort of been prepping fans for adversity. And I'm not talking about like the adversity we face in games, but almost just like he understands the nature of the NFL and that wins are hard to come by. And to be 8-1 at this point is a difficult thing to do, and losses are bound to come. How do you think this team will respond to an eventual loss, this season, outside of the one from Philly?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been something he's talked about quite a bit, and I talked to Wes Phillips about that when I was doing my profile of O'Connell before the season, and O'Connell talked about it, that when his name started to come up for jobs last year, it was in the middle of that Rams losing streak where they didn't win a game for like a month. I mean, they lost, I think, Packers, the Titans, the 49ers, and they had a bye in the middle of all of that. So O'Connell was kind of like, my name's coming up for these jobs, but we just got to figure out if we're going to be able to make the playoffs, given that the fact that division, the Cardinals got off to such a good start last year, and the 49ers were in the mix, obviously ending up in the NFC title game. So I think Wes Phillips has talked about this too, that when they got through that stretch last year, it was, we are not going to panic. We believe in what we're doing. We're not going to sit here and overreact to 1 or 2 losses. We're going to get back at it and trust that our process is good enough to get us where we want to go. And ultimately, they were vindicated in that approach. But yes, I mean, he's talked a lot about, he talks culture a lot, and everybody kind of dismisses it. At least I think they had, as just kind of happy talk. Okay, sounds like an excited new manager at work that's fresh out of getting an MBA and he's learned all the business jargon. I mean, you can kind of look at it that way. But he's talked about this and said, this is where this stuff gets tested. This is where all of the culture stuff, all of the work we do to kind of get everybody on the same page, that's where it pays off, when those things don't turn into people pointing fingers, people kind of saying, I'm going to get mine, I'm not going to worry about doing my job so that the guy next to me can do his. That kind of stuff, I think, is where they feel like the culture pays off, and that's where it really gets tested. So yeah, I think he is preparing them for that. I think he's preparing fans for that as well, because odds are they're going to lose a game at some point. I mean, you have to figure they're going to have a bad day. They've gotten a lot of bounces that have gone their way. They may not get them the entire way. And obviously, you'd rather have that happen in November, December than in January, certainly in a playoff game. But yeah, I odds are they're not going to get through these next 3. I don't know that I would, even though they're all at home, I don't think I would sit here and put a ton of money on them running through that stretch without a hiccup. I mean, it's certainly very possible that they're going to lose one at some point. They may not, but yeah, I think if you're being realistic, you have to consider that as a possibility. So yeah, I think he is trying to do some of that, and kind of with this idea that we can't expect that everything's going to be this easy and then panic the second it's not. You have to assume that some of this is going to be really difficult, and being realistic about that, I think, is part of where you say, okay, this didn't knock us off of our axis that much. We expected this, it could happen, and let's deal with it and get back to work.
So with that, then, what do you think will happen on Sunday at US Bank Stadium?
Well, I mean, I feel like I haven't written my prediction for the paper yet, and Dan Barreau usually asks me this on Friday too, but Andrew and I were talking about this today. Like, we're doing these things earlier in the week. We both agree they're going to win. It's an interesting one in the sense that the Cowboys obviously have a lot of weapons: Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, and Dalton Schultz, Michael Gallup. I mean, they've certainly got enough guys that would scare you, especially if you're shorthanded in the secondary. And dealing with that pass rush, I mean, this is why making predictions on a Wednesday is a little bit difficult, because Christian Europe, your left tackle, or is Blake Brandle your left tackle? I think that changes things when it's, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, all the other pass rushers the Cowboys have, which is a pretty deep group. That probably changes things to some degree. But I generally think if you can protect Cousins, you can throw on this secondary. Trayvon Diggs takes a lot of chances. If you can beat him, this is a team that plays a lot of man coverage. Andrew brought this up on our podcast today. They play a lot of cover one, and we have seen Justin Jefferson feast on man coverage when he's gotten it this year. And I think if you get that, it's also a team that's given up 200-something rushing yards each of the last 2 games. So if you get Dalvin Cook going like they did in the second half, O'Connell said it too, they didn't do a good enough job getting him involved early in the game. I think they'll try to do more of that to, probably also keep that Cowboys offense off the field. But yeah, I think they win. Andrew said this is the first one that is not close. I don't know that I agree with that. I also have just resigned myself to the fact that my game story that I file off the gun every week is just, it's going to be frantic. It's going to make me draw on 5 years of covering 90, 100 lost baseball teams that blew leads all the time. So So I'm kind of just resigned to that. But I think it's close. But yeah, I think also being at home, I think that they feed off of that. I think the crowd's going to be pretty turned up for a late afternoon start against a team that you guys can tell me this probably better than I could say it on my own. But my guess would be if you're ranking teams Vikings fans hate the most, the Packers obviously are number one. I would submit the Cowboys maybe number two.
I'd put Saints there.
The Saints probably are in there more recently, but
Saints, Eagles, Cowboys.
Yeah, historically for sure.
I was saying, if we're talking 90s, because the Cowboys wrecked in the 90s, and they had that Herschel Walker trade. But more recently, I think we have a few other ones that we've grown to hate recently.
Yeah, Saints and Eagles in the playoffs certainly have been better the Saints lately in the playoffs. But yeah, 2009, 2017, certainly part of it. But the whole Cowboys thing, I mean, it's very.
I mean, they're like the Yankees, right? Like everyone hates them.
Well, and they haven't won anything, much like the Yankees recently too. So
there you go.
They haven't won the Super Bowl since 1995. So I mean, after the '95 season was the last time they've even been to one. Obviously, great dynasty in the '90s, but have not won much of anything since. I'm trying to think if they've even been to an NFC title game since then.
Since
I don't
95.
think they have. Yeah.
No, they haven't.
Division playoffs.
Must suck, man. Must really suck.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're hating their 5 Super Bowls and yeah.
Well, but the expectations are pretty high down there, so I'm sure people are irritated that it's been this long since they've been back. But it's always a few people are coming in here and saying the Cowboys are high on the list. So
especially older fans.
I still get a lot of Drew Pearson pushed off tweets during. So
we'll send you an obligatory one this weekend, just so you can have it in your mentions.
Something about Armin Katayan and.
And I'm sure with the way the games have gone this year for the Vikings, something crazy is going to happen at some point in this game. So we might be able to chalk that up into history books too. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the ref takes out Cam Bynum. I thought that was going to be the weirdest thing you'd see, and that was not the weirdest thing in this month. So,
well, Ben, I want to thank you for hopping on tonight. I know we've been chatting about getting you back on, so I appreciate you taking some time here. Anything you want to shout out before you hop off? I know you said you were working on an article.
Are you at least drinking? Are you at least drinking tonight, Ben?
I am not. I was. I just got playing categories with my kids.
Okay, that's the best. That's way better. Way better.
I thought I had it locked up, and my wife rallied to tie me in the last round. So kind of upset about that. As the wordsmith in the house, you figure, okay, I typically win these things, but she has a journalism degree too, so she caught up to me in that regard. Kind of a little mad about that, but whatever. Maybe I'll drown my sorrows with a beer there afterwards. But just writing for later in the week about Cousins and some of the pocket presence stuff that stuck out to me quite a bit in the last couple of weeks, and just being a little more willing to make plays with his feet in ways that he can do it. So talk to him about that a little bit today, and so I have a little bit more on that later in the week. So Saturday, I an insider on Saturdays, and that'll be this week's.
Sweet. Look forward to reading it. So thank you very much again, and we'll be sure to connect in the future and get you back on here.
Yeah, always fun to do it. So thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
That's Ben Goessling, Star Tribune, Access Vikings. You can see him on or listen to him on KFan with Dan Barrero. Went a little longer than I expected, but that's great. I'm happy that Ben gave us that time. So let's just round this show out quick with some predictions for Sunday.
Hey, Matt, can I jump in real quick? I know we're trying to wrap this up, and I get
Let's do it quick.
Just a couple real quick comments here, just because we really appreciate everyone who actually chimes in and mentions, comments here in the comment section and are listening live. So Miles or Matt, can either one of you answer this? Like, how? Well, here, why don't we start with this, Matt, because you tweeted about this today. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk about an Oklahoma player tonight. Sean had mentioned where's Brian Asamoah right now. Excited to see that guy progress. His lateral quickness is special. You put out a tweet today about Brian Asamoah. So can you talk about that a little bit and kind of what he's been doing?
I'll say something quick and then we'll move on. Brian Asamoah is a rookie playing special teams. He is playing really well, in my opinion. And I think there's a chance for him to eventually see the starting lineup. But when you have Jordan Hicks and Eric Kendricks playing the way they have the past few weeks, it's going to be hard to see him in the lineup. But yeah, if you want to see some fun plays, I know people don't normally watch kickoffs and punt returns, but watch Brian Asamoah because that dude plays with a lot of fire on that unit. So.
Love it. And thanks for that question, Sean. And then one last one, Skull TYA catch. Miles, can you answer this one? How are the Cowboys favored right now? They're -1.
I think you listened to Doogie too, didn't you?
I did.
On Score. So honestly, I think this could be a Vegas thing. They want people to bet this game. So you bet the Cowboys to favor, even though the Vikings are 8-1 at home. You're going to get more people to play the Vikings on that number. Was it -2? Cowboys -2.
So I think right now.
That's -1 now, but it was -2. I think at the end of the game, like end of Sunday or Monday or whatever it was. So I think you're going to get more people leaning toward the Vikings and betting the Vikings there because that's should be an obvious like play, and so Vegas is just I think putting it out there to get people to put money on it. That's just probably easy money for them because they're going to expect most people are going to take the Vikings there. So that's why the line's starting to shift, as you can see. Already to -1. I would assume by Sunday it might even be even or even favor the Vikings at that point. So that's why I think it is. I don't think it should be, but Vegas wants to make their money, and if they're going to favor the Vikings by 3, why would anybody take that money besides Cowboy fans? So
what are you predicting, Miles, for Sunday's game?
26-25.
Vikings?
I don't know. I mean, that's just the way dude, I can predict whatever, and the Vikings are going to surprise me either way. So I just say that as tongue in cheek, but honestly, 27-24 Vikings.
Okay.
But I do think it's going to be one of those it's one of those games just coming off the Bills game and how crazy shit's been. It wouldn't surprise me if this was the week that they lost a game. And I'd be okay with it. No matter how the game goes, we're at a point where I'll be okay if the Vikings lose because they're 8-1. And so if they give one up to a good Cowboys team coming off a tough loss to the Packers, I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay.
But I'm still taking the Vikings either way because I can't.
Ryan,
I'm at a point where
Ryan,
I can't bet against them.
How about you, Ryan?
I kind of feel the same way as Miles. I'm thinking a little higher scoring than that. I'm going to go 30, 34, 31.
Okay.
Vikings.
I was kind of waiting again this week for a message from you, Ryan, or even Dave, on how close I was. So I predicted the Washington game perfectly, and then last week I predicted 38-30 Vikings, and it was 33-30. So that's pretty damn close. So I feel
not
like I'm
close
kind
enough,
of on
man. You only get credit if you actually hit it.
I feel like I'm getting kind of close or hitting a little bit of a hot streak here, but I don't know. There's something about Sunday, the excitement. I hope this team can navigate through it. I think they might come out a little slow, and potentially Dallas could take the lead, and we're fighting to come back again. But this team is, like I've said, opportunistic and clutch, and I do think they pull this one off. I'm going to go 30-27. I'm going to keep it there. Vikings win. So
that was almost my prediction. So good one. I like it.
That's all I have tonight. Next week is going to be a little bit different of a show. We'll have probably 2 different recordings to air next Wednesday night. I don't think we will be live, but we're working with Chad Graff, former writer and beat reporter for the Vikings at The Athletic, who now covers the New England Patriots. and Jordy McElroy, who is the editor for the Patriots Wire out in New England. So we'll look to get those two on here and get their thoughts on the upcoming matchup for Thanksgiving. Otherwise, that's it. Thank you, guys. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to everyone in the chat. And Skol Vikings.
Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and feel free to rate us on your favorite aggregator. A big shout out goes to our partners, the Daily Norseman, where the best Vikings content can be found. To That's Badass Wood Art, when you're looking for something unique to brighten your space. And to Lake Monster Brewing, home of the best beer in Minnesota. Skol, everybody!